Hello, this is Greg. This is the first in a long series that I'll be doing on Black students at white educational institutions. In this episode, I was particularly struck by the fact that because I had good grades in regular public school in New York as well as in junior high, um, my mom decided that it'd be a good idea for me to go to a private boarding school. So I wanted to address some comments to both the college prep high schools for black students might go to, as well as the boarding schools. So um, I I had a funny experience. I spent 5 years at my boarding school. At this point, I'm not going to say the name because I don't want any drama from it. Um, but I wanted to say that I was amazed at the small and large things that I saw that affected me greatly, and that really sort of shifted me over time on sort of what the process is about and things you might want to consider. I will admit that because of some of the craziness I experienced with people trying to attack me, etc., I seriously thought about suicide and other things while I was there. But I ended up getting, good grades and completing the school successfully and going on to an Ivy League college. Um, there are just a lot of small and large details that one might be want to be aware of. The first thing I'd recommend is try to do some research on the institution you've gone to or are going to, especially when it relates to black students. I say this because what you'll find is that there'll be teachers that'll be able to introduce you to other black students that have gone there that can help, and those folks can help you understand small details like you do and don't want to take classes from certain professors if you have a choice. There are some professors, for example, that will ensure that they give you the lowest grades possible. Um, so the history of the institution and the history of people that will end up being some people that are regarded as the best instructors at your school will also be those who you'll find to be the most difficult to get fair treatment from. Um, I'm My mind is buzzing with a number of topics, but in this topic, I wanted to review a something that's called the invisible knapsack of privilege. So, what this is about is that there's a woman who went to Wellesley who was writing a book about her specialty was women's issues or women's studies, and she was working on a piece about the difference between men and women, and she really had to recognize the fact that there's a privilege impact in a lot of cases. So particularly if you're at a boarding school or a prep school, you'll notice, as is the case everywhere, that the wealthiest students, both the parents and the students, get completely different treatment when it comes to everything related to that school. So those can include getting the best instructors. That can include things like uh, uh, errors or things that students are allowed to get away with that other students are not. Just a long list of things. And so the reason it's called the invisible knapsack is particularly if you're a white male and tall and handsome and blonde, when you walk into the room, there's a whole bunch of privileges that go with that. And so you'll notice that those individuals in particular, and from the best families, will often get the leadership roles or the best opportunities when it comes to plays or in a football field or in all these different ways. And there are things that can influence like that. For example, many of these folks are multi-generational legacies, and their parents have donated a lot of money. So there's a reason why that happens. Um, I thought I had an incident from my school where There were some black students who had a chance to meet regularly with a black alumni from my school. And um, because those students, this is a private boarding school, and there are a number of white students who didn't have weekly meetings with anyone just to hear what they thought. So these white students all of a sudden sort of generated a fairly racist newspaper and other activities in their lashing out at the administration for having a way for black students to be better served than white students were being served. So um, in this case, the privilege was actually going to black students that wasn't going to black white students. And the black students don't lash out when they don't get services that they need or want, but privileged whites actually will. So one of my professors that I really loved, even though I had graduated and I ran into each other the same weekend that this incident occurred, and I asked him about this incident, and he looked at me and he said, you know, you have a problem, and the problem is you need to be aware of why these institutions were created. So I looked at him and I was kind of shocked because my family was paying tuition just like everybody else to go here and running up debt. But he basically informed me that most of the prep or private schools in America were created back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, with the express purpose of finding a place for the wealthiest citizens to send their kids during the years where they may create too much problems for their parents at these, in these small towns, etc., that they controlled. So the whole idea was get rid of the kids until they were sane, and then bring them back. So what you'll notice is that there's a small block of very wealthy students based on their families. And you'll also notice that these folks, I noticed at least at my school, that these folks were excellent students in most cases, but they also had unlimited allowances. And these students tended to have drinking or drug habits that they managed with their allowance nicely, and would even pay for other people's drugs because it wasn't a big deal if they were friends. Um, at my school, what we found was that if you're a black student caught with drugs or alcohol, you were immediately tossed out. But if you're a white student and you were caught with the same offense, there would be special rules or techniques to make sure you could stay at the academy. So I wanted to sort of introduce ideas that one could drill down on and really understand better how these institutions work and how to make the most of them. The biggest thing I wanted to note to you, and one should think about, is just because you pay tuition like everybody else does not entitle you to the same quality of services or consideration from that institution. Uh, in fact, you'll spend about 3 to 5% of your time during that entire period wondering why it is certain students are getting certain privileges and opportunities that you don't. But you may have better grades, or you may have, reasons that have been stated as to why you should be a better candidate for that. Once you understand that this is normal and is no longer a surprise, it puts you in a stronger position. I'm getting near my 10-minute limit for this round, but in general, congratulations on taking on the challenge of a school of this caliber. Um, there are some thinking points that you might want to think about that'll affect your degree of success at these academies in going forward. Um, and finally, I would say expect discrimination in small and large ways, and keep rolling despite your exposure to these.